What if I told you there's a vitamin so essential that without it, your brain literally starts to deteriorate? A vitamin hiding in plain sight on your grocery store shelves that most plant-based eaters aren't getting nearly enough of. It's not B12. It's not D3. It's not iron. It's vitamin B3, also called niacin, and the latest 2025 research suggests it may be one of the most powerful nutrients for protecting your brain against Alzheimer's and dementia. Today, we're breaking down the best plant-based sources of B3 ranked by how much they contain, how well your body actually absorbs it, and what that means for your long-term health. Stay until the end, because the number 5 source is one almost nobody talks about, and it contains more niacin per 100 grams than almost any other food on the planet. First, a quick, painless biology lesson. Vitamin B3 exists mainly in 2 forms: nicotinic acid and nicotinamide. Both are used by your body to produce a molecule called NAD plus nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. NAD plus is not just important. It is essential to life as we know it. It powers your cellular metabolism. It drives DNA repair. It regulates your body's redox reactions, the chemical balance between oxidation and antioxidation. And it keeps your mitochondria, your cell's energy factories, running. When NAD plus drops, everything suffers. And here's the thing, NAD plus naturally declines with age. By your 60s, you may have half the NAD plus you had at 20. This is exactly why researchers are now connecting niacin, the main dietary driver of NAD+, to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. The daily value for niacin is 16 milligrams niacin equivalents per day for adult men and 14 milligrams NE for adult women. Let's see which plant foods actually get you there. Coming in at number 1 among cereal grains is a food that's actually not rice at all. It's the seed of an aquatic grass: wild rice. Wild rice contains approximately 6.13 milligrams of niacin per 100 grams. That's about 38% of your daily value in a single serving. Traditional rice landraces, heirloom varieties grown in places like China and parts of Southeast Asia, can contain anywhere from 0.20 to 4.52 milligrams per 100 grams. And Chinese wild rice varieties have been measured as high as 10.3 milligrams per 100 grams. That's over 64% DV in 100 grams. Compare that to regular white rice, which, after polishing, loses most of its B3 content, and you start to see why what type of rice you eat matters enormously. And here's a fascinating fact. Unpolished rice can contain up to 7.2 milligrams per 100 grams, and rice bran, the outer layer stripped away during milling, contains a staggering 26.7 to 40 milligrams per 100 grams. That's why traditionally milled rice was a niacin staple for billions of people for centuries. Bottom line, swap white rice for wild or unpolished rice whenever possible. If rice teaches us that processing destroys nutrients, legumes teach us something even more powerful. Preparation can create nutrients. And that's where things get fascinating. Legumes are the unsung heroes of plant-based B3 nutrition. Faba beans, lupin, and pea flour lead the pack, with niacin content ranging from 0.88 to 3.55 milligrams per 100 grams dry weight, contributing roughly 6 to 22% of your daily value per 100 grams. Soy is interesting too. Yellow soybean varieties consistently outperform black soybeans in nicotinic acid content, thanks to genetic differences between cultivars. But here's where it gets really interesting. How you prepare legumes dramatically changes their B3 content. Boiling? It reduces niacin by 13 to 62%. You're literally pouring your B vitamins down the drain with the cooking water. But germination, sprouting your beans and lentils at 20 to 30 degrees Celsius in the dark, actually increases available niacin. And fermentation boosts niacin content by 20 to 91%, depending on temperature and concentration. Science fact: fermented lentil flour has dramatically more bioavailable niacin than plain boiled lentils. This is why traditional fermented foods like tempeh, dal preparations, and fermented grain porridges have sustained whole populations nutritionally for thousands of years. Bottom line, sprout or ferment your legumes when you can. At minimum, keep the cooking liquid for soups and stews, don't discard the niacin with it. And yet, Even sprouted and fermented legumes are only part of the story. Because there is one plant-based food that doesn't just compete with grains and beans, it dwarfs them. And it doesn't grow in fields. It grows in the shadows. Now we arrive at the food that genuinely surprised the researchers and will likely surprise you. When mushrooms are dried, the water disappears, but the niacin remains. What you're left with is a nutrient-concentrated powerhouse. And that's why dried mushrooms are extraordinary sources of vitamin B3. Dried portobello mushrooms contain around 8.37 milligrams per 100 grams dry weight. That's 52% of your daily value. But that's just the start. Agaricus bisporus, the common white button mushroom, when dried, contains an almost unbelievable 43 to 53 milligrams of niacin per 100 grams dry weight. That is 269 to 331% of your daily value in a single 100-gram serving. Even fresh wild mushrooms contain 2.13 to 7.31 milligrams per 100 grams. Pleurotus ostreatus oyster mushrooms are another cultivated species with exceptional niacin levels. Now, how you dry mushrooms matters. Freeze-drying is the gold standard, with only about 22% niacin loss. Blanching causes significantly higher losses. And prolonged exposure to light and oxygen also degrades niacin. Wild fact, mushrooms are one of the only plant-based foods that, when dried, become more nutritionally dense than almost any other single food, not just for niacin, but for several key nutrients. They're essentially nature's own multivitamin tablet. Bottom line, add dried mushrooms to everything: soups, stews, sauces, broths. Especially freeze-dried or sun-dried varieties from quality sources. But not every plant food plays in the same league. Some contribute quietly, modestly, and still matter, especially when eaten daily. Compared to dried mushrooms or wild rice, vegetables are not niacin powerhouses. But they're not irrelevant either. Green peas, Pisum sativum, provide 1.8 milligrams per 100 grams, about 11% of your DV. That might not sound huge, but green peas are incredibly easy to eat in large quantities and pair well with everything. Ginger is a surprising entry, providing up to 1.52 milligrams per 100 grams, roughly 10% DV. Not that you're eating 100 grams of ginger at once, but it's a meaningful bonus from a food most people use as a flavoring. Other vegetables range from 0.46 to 3.5 milligrams per 100 grams, but here's the important caveat. Bioaccessibility from vegetables is modest, only 33.9 to 40%. That means your body may only absorb a third of the niacin listed on a nutrition label from vegetable sources. Bottom line, vegetables support niacin intake, but they're supporting actors, not the lead role. Let grains, legumes, and especially dried mushrooms carry the B3 load. But there's one more category worth mentioning, not because it dominates, but because it quietly reinforces. Nuts and seeds contain moderate niacin, generally in the range of 0.5 to 2.0 milligrams per 100 grams, but there's a processing twist worth noting. Roasting almonds can increase extractable niacin. Heat breaks down the food matrix, releasing niacin that would otherwise remain partially bound. Nuts and seeds won't win the niacin race, but they make steady contributions. And that steady contribution matters more than most people realize. Because vitamin B3 isn't just about meeting a number on a nutrition label. It's about what happens inside your brain over decades. And this is where the story gets serious. Now, the piece of this puzzle that I promised you at the beginning. And this is genuinely remarkable. New research from 2020 to 2025 is building a compelling case that vitamin B3, specifically through its role in ND+ production, is deeply connected to the prevention and progression of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Here's the science. First, NAD+ levels decline with age dramatically. And NAD+ isn't optional for your brain. It powers mitochondrial function in neurons, supports DNA repair, and regulates neuroinflammation. Second, niacin works through a receptor called CAR2, which modulates microglial activity, your brain's immune cells. And one of the key functions of these cells is clearing amyloid beta plaques, the hallmark buildup seen in Alzheimer's disease. Niacin literally helps your brain clean itself. Third, a 2025 pilot trial found that nicotinamide riboside, AB3, derived compound improved cerebrovascular function and cognitive performance in older adults with vascular disease. Early stage, but the signal is there. Fourth, the original connection between niacin deficiency and dementia goes back over a century. Pellagra, the disease of severe niacin deficiency, presents with 3 Ds: dermatitis, diarrhea, and dementia. That last D is not metaphorical. Without enough B3, your brain function deteriorates. The mechanistic links are strong. The clinical trial data is still emerging. But the direction of the science is clear. Optimizing your niacin intake is a meaningful, evidence-backed investment in your long-term cognitive health. But knowing that niacin matters isn't enough. What truly determines its impact is something most people never think about. Not just how much you eat, but how much your body can actually use. Before we wrap up, let's talk about the factor that changes everything: bioavailability. It's not just what you eat, it's how much your body can actually use. Here are the processing techniques that dramatically improve niacin absorption. Germination. Sprout your lentils, fava beans, and grains. Studies show this increases available niacin, especially done in the dark at 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. Fermentation. Ferment your legume flours. Research shows niacin content can increase by up to 91% through fermentation. Nixtamalization. This is the traditional Mesoamerican process of soaking maize in an alkaline solution, lime water. It's literally what prevented pellagra in Native American populations for thousands of years, and why pellagra erupted in populations that adopted corn without this technique. Nixtamalization releases bound niacin and makes it bioavailable. Avoid overboiling. If you boil legumes, use the cooking water. The niacin leaches into the liquid, so make it into soup or dal. Don't drain and discard. Freeze-dry or sun-dry mushrooms rather than blanching them for maximum niacin retention. So, with all of that in mind, what does the hierarchy actually look like? Let's simplify it. Now step back and look at that list. 1 nutrient, 5 food categories, and a clear pattern. Processing matters, preparation matters, and food choice matters. Vitamin B3 isn't glamorous. It doesn't get the headlines that omega-3s or vitamin D get. But the science is clear. Niacin is foundational to cellular energy, DNA repair, brain health, and long-term cognitive resilience. And if you're eating a plant-based diet, you need to be intentional about where you're getting it. The good news? Wild rice, dried mushrooms, and properly prepared legumes can absolutely meet your needs and may be doing far more for your brain and your future than most people ever suspect. If you found this helpful, smash that like button, subscribe, and drop in the comments. What's your favorite niacin-rich plant food? And if you want to go deeper on plant-based nutrition science, I've got a whole playlist linked below. Stay happy and healthy!